Good morning, everyone, on a beautiful, sunshiny morning outside in Dufferin County. We've asked the staff to begin recording the meeting, and this meeting is being live streamed and publicly broadcast. The recording of this meeting will be also available on our website in the future. We will begin the meeting by sharing the land acknowledgement statement. We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that Dufferin County resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Tiatani, Adirondack, Anishinaabe, and Anishinaabes people. We also acknowledge that various municipalities within the county of Dufferin reside within the treaty lands named under the Haldeman Deed of 1784 and two of the Williams Treaties of 1818, Treaty 18, the Nottawasaga Purchase, and Treaty 19, the Agistos Treaty. These traditional lands upon which we live and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and tradition. It is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways and resources. I will now ask the clerk to do the roll call.
Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
So, Councillor Capes?
Sure. Thank you. Good morning.
Councillor Krillman?
Present.
Councillor Guardhouse?
Present.
Councillor Garretts?
Here.
Councillor Bonato?
Here.
Councillor Hawkins?
Present.
Councillor Little?
Present.
Councillor McLean?
Present.
Councillor Mills?
Present.
Councillor Post?
Present.
Councillor Wrench is not online yet. Councillor Solomon?
Present.
Councillor Taylor?
Present.
Councillor White?
Present.
And notice was given by Councillor Nix and also Councillor Hall and Warden Horner.
Present.
Thank you.
So due to our new meeting structure, I would like to say thank you to those who have been joining, are able to join us from wherever you are this morning. For some of you, this will be the first time you've had to come to a council meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning, but appreciate the efforts that you're making to move into our new meeting structure. And so council have supported trying out a new meeting structure. And I will now turn it over to Michelle to review how that's going to work.
Thank you, Warden. As the Warden has mentioned, this is an 18-month trial that was approved by Council in the February 13th meeting. The structure is now basically the same as it was before, but it is direct to Council, and we are no longer using standing committees. You will look at the agenda, and basically everything is the same except for the reports, and now there are two sections of reports. Section 10 is now for information reports, and Section 11 is now for actionable items. Once we reach Section 9 on the agenda, the Warden will ask if there are any reports that need to be pulled for separate discussion, and then Council can also notify the clerk prior to the meeting to let us know if they would like any reports removed. Under Section 10, the information reports, these will be adopted by one motion to receive the reports, excluding any that were pulled, and then they will be discussed under Section 12. The Section 11 reports, which are the action item reports, will be reviewed by the portfolio chair, providing a quick summary of each report, similar to what is currently done now under the standing committee minutes. After each portfolio is reviewed, the Warden will again give anyone an opportunity to remove the report. Once the review is done by all portfolio chairs, it is the last chance for any reports to be pulled from the consent agenda, and then one motion will be made for the actions to be adopted. Anything that has been pulled from either of those sections will now be discussed as normal under Section 12. Are there any questions?
Everybody clear? So we will ask for your patience this morning as we go through here and try to put our new format into place. So given that there are no questions, oh, James, was that your hand? Sorry, okay. Given that there are no questions, may I have a motion to approve the agenda and any addendums? All those in, moved by Chris, seconded by James. All those in favor? Carried. Next item, members may declare pecuniary interest now. Please state the interest and the general nature thereof. Declarations must be verbal and in writing and can be emailed to the clerk. Councillor Post.
Thank you, Warden Horner. I do have a conflict for 11.4, which is the community grants allocation. I would ask when we get to that item that we separate Celebrate Your Awesome from that item and vote on that one item separately.
We will do that. Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, let's move forward. May I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the April 10th council meeting? Moved by Mills, seconded by Creelman, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council April 10th be adopted. All those in favor? Carried. Moving to item number 7, proclamations, delegations, and presentations. Now, first up on the screen, I hereby proclaim the month of May 2025 to be Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month in the County of Dufferin. We are joined by James Jackson, the MS Ambassador for Dufferin-Caledon, to accept the proclamation and say a few words. So, James. First of all, let's do the proclamation.
Okay,
There you go.
thank you very much.
Okay. Was there no pictures today? Yes, you go ahead and, oh,
Thank you.
go ahead.
Thank you. I thank you very much for doing this. It means a lot to myself and to MS Canada and to the people I represent. To bring that awareness to that a lot of people don't even realize that they might have issues, and it is an interesting disease, I will say that, but it will not break me. I refuse to let it break me, and as a matter of fact, to me, it is a gift. It has opened my eyes to a world that I was either blind or ignorant to, and yeah, through all my experiences in life, it's brought me to where I am now, and I'm not going to give up. But I just wanted to say thank you very much for doing this. And this year was actually I had an ambitious plan that I wanted to get a proclamation read in all, let me see, my ride in Dufferin-Caledon, there's 11 towns. So, and then of course, if you include the county. So it was an ambitious plan, and I think I've actually hit it. So I thank you again very much for doing this, and yeah, thank you.
Do any members of council have any questions for James?
No.
Okay, seeing none, thank you, James, for joining us today, and we will make it a little easier for you to get out this door. Thanks. Okay, the second proclamation is Community Living Month. And I hereby proclaim the month of 2025 to be Community Living Month in the County of Dufferin. Joining us virtually are Diane Kite and Ilana Kalasali from Community Living Dufferin to accept the proclamation and say a few words. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning. Good morning, members of Dufferin County Council. I'm Diane Kite, the Executive Director at CLD, and I'm very happy to be here on behalf of the people we support, the families, and the entire organization. I want to sincerely thank you for for your proclamation recognizing May as Community Living Month here in Dufferin County. It truly means a lot to myself and everyone here at CLD. By making this declaration, you are not just recognizing a month, you are showing your commitment to the inclusion and the rights of people with intellectual disabilities to work and participate fully in their community here in Dufferin County. At Community Living Dufferin, we support over 150 people, individuals across Dufferin County, through a range of services. We have our residential services, our supported independent living services, our Options Day program, employment services, and a variety of other fee-for-service options for people we support residentially and other people in the community. Our mission is to support people with intellectual disabilities to achieve their fullest potential. We do so by promoting inclusion, independence, and a strong sense of belonging, values that align so closely with the spirit of Community Living Month and the broader goals of Dufferin County. We truly value the strong and ongoing partnership we have with the county. Community Living Month is a powerful reminder of how far we've come together and the continued work needed to ensure that every person in our community has the opportunity to lead a full and meaningful life. Thank you again for your support and for your advocacy. We are proud, very proud, to be part of this community and remain committed to working with you and everyone in Dufferin County to ensure that everyone belongs. Thank you so much for this proclamation.
Thank you, Diane, and we're very proud to have you as part of our community as well. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, thank you for your time this morning, and we'll make sure you receive the proclamation in the mail.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And please join us if you're available on May 1st for our flag raising at 11 a.m. at our main building on County Road 3. Thank you again, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. We have a third proclamation this morning. I hereby proclaim May 1st, 2025 to be First Responders Day in the County of Dufferin. I would like to welcome our Chief Paramedic, Gary Staples, to come up and accept the proclamation and to say a few words. Oops.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of OPP Dufferin, our 5 fire departments, Orangeville, Shelburne, Grand Valley, Mulmer, Melanchthon, and Rosemont, and Dufferin County Paramedic Service, I humbly accept this proclamation in recognition of the heroic efforts, tireless commitment, and unwavering dedication to those who serve on the front lines of emergency response. Our first responders are more than just professionals. They are protectors, caregivers, and neighbors. They are the calm in the chaos, the helping hand in the darkest hour, and the strength we rely on when crisis occurs. We've seen the courage in their faces of fire, storms, accidents, and crisis of every kind, but we also see the compassion in the quiet comfort they give to a frightened child, the patience they show to those in pain, and the humanity they bring to every call. Today's proclamation is more than words. It is a promise to our emergency responders, a promise that you are seen, you are heard, and you are valued. Not just today, but every day. On behalf of all of our first responders, thank you for the recognition of the work we do, the ongoing support, and the commitment to ensuring the safety and well-being of Dufferin County. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Gary? On behalf of the council, Gary, I do want to say we do value our first responders each and every day. As member of a fire board, and for example, I'm very proud of the dedication and service that folks in this community give to others. So thank you. All right. Moving into Emergency Preparedness Week. Aligning with the Ontario Provincial Emergency Management Strategy and Action Plan and its goal to keep Ontario in a state of constant readiness, preparedness, the province's theme for 2025 is Plan for Every Season. This theme reflects the unique challenges facing Ontario on a seasonal basis and the opportunities to practice emergency preparedness throughout the year. I hereby proclaim the week of May 4th to 10th, 2025 to be Emergency Preparedness Week in the County of Dufferin. And we certainly have seen the need for being prepared in emergencies in the last month. We're moving into the public question period. Is there anyone in the gallery with a question? Seeing none. And I've confirmed that no other questions were submitted to the clerk before the meeting. Moving to number 8, determination of items requiring separate discussion. Reports under 10 and 11 have been compiled under consent agenda to facilitate a single vote for council consideration. And as was mentioned earlier, council may remove any item from the consent agenda for individual considerations. Reports removed from the consent agenda will be discussed under item 12. The clerk has received advance notice and has been notified there's a request to separate the following items for discussion from the consent agenda from Councillor Wrench. Item 10.1, item 10.2, item 10.3, item 11.1, item 11.3, and item 11.4. All items from section 10 and all items except for the access Dufferin minutes from section 11 have been moved to section 12. Okay, so section 10, all items have been removed. Sorry, Councillor Mills?
Sorry, Madam Warden. I just wanted to mention that, I mean, this is the first meeting where we're trying this new model. I'm trying to keep an open mind, but, you know, essentially pulling every item from the consent agenda seems to defeat the purpose of a consent agenda. And I think what's even more disappointing is that the councillor who chose to pull these items, he is here now.
He's online.
Okay,
yeah.
well, that makes me feel somewhat better. So I do hope that there is, you know, good reason to pull each and every one of these items, that there is something to discuss and that it's not just a performative act.
Thank you. So we'll move then to item number 11. So items 11.1, 11.3, and 11.4 have been removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion. Could I have a motion to adopt item 11.2, the Access Dufferin minutes from March 19th? Moved by Bonato, seconded by Post. All those in favor? Carried. All right. Then moving to item number 12, we will now discuss the reports that were pulled from the consent agenda. Item number 10.1, Community Development and Tourism, and I will turn this one over to Councillor Mills. If you could just outline what is here.
Thank you, Warden. This report is from our Director of Community Development and Tourism, which basically just sets out a bit of an overview framework of what's planned for the Planning and Economic Development Summit, which is scheduled for May 12th. I'm not sure if Raj wants to add anything. I think the report was pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, could I have a motion then that the report of the Director of Development and Tourism County Summit, whoops, wrong, moving into the wrong one. Oh, is that the one? Yep, sorry. County Summit on Planning and Economic Development be received. Moved by Mills, seconded by Post. Councillor Wrench, since you separated the item, do you wish to start the discussion?
Thanks. Yeah, and I just had a couple of quick questions, and the email said I didn't know which way to do it, but I figured I didn't want to do it as a consent agenda and not get to ask questions. So the first question I had was, it seems to be, I don't understand why planning and economic development are being discussed together. I don't understand the link between the two of them. And following to that is, I think we have an economic development strategic plan. So I don't quite understand why there are meetings planned with lower tier economic development committees. I kind of thought we knew where we were going and what we were doing.
Raj, would you like to answer that?
Sure, through you, Warden. So the reason why the summit is focusing on economic development and planning is because they do actually work hand in hand together. And the purpose of the summit and the purpose of the meetings with local area municipalities is to get a better understanding of what the local area municipalities have planned for their own respective areas. Some of the local area municipalities do actually have economic development officers or an economic development committee. And so for us at the county level to conduct meetings or to have a vision or a strategy without input from the local area municipalities wouldn't be productive. And so having these meetings is to ensure that everybody has a clear understanding of roles, responsibilities, and also the direction that both the county and the local area municipalities are heading in for both planning and economic development.
Philip, do you have anything further?
Well, yeah, I'd like I'd like an example of how economic, planning and economic development work together. I'm actually asking. I don't understand that, and I'm, just being told they are. If I could get a bit more detail there, that would be terrific. On the economic development front alone, I thought we did all of that last year. We did all that consultation. I thought y'all did all that. Maybe it's 2 years ago already.
Through you, Warden. Yes, so I'd be happy to provide an example. So for example, if a inquiry is to come in with respect to a large investment from, say, potentially a business owner or a site selector, that initial inquiry actually lands with our economic development department. It could also simultaneously land at the economic development department or officer at the local level. Either way, the ECDev officer, in conjunction and partnership with the local area municipality, work together to identify what the needs of that particular business are, whether it be workforce, whether it be site selection, whether it be finding different grant opportunities at the provincial, federal level to facilitate that business moving to Dufferin County or potentially having an expansion within Dufferin County. So that's the first step. And then thereafter, you land with the planning department. That's where the application process is facilitated for the actual development application itself. And that's where we conduct an analysis to determine whether zoning is appropriate for that given site that's been chosen. And we work through that process. We also identify if there's official plan amendments that need to occur. And so all those development applications are considered at both the local and county level if they require county input. And thereafter, you move into the building permit process, which lands with our building division, in which you obtain your permits to build and facilitate that site. So it is a process by which each one of those different divisions is quite involved, and that's why we think that having a planning and economic development summit hand in hand work well together.
Councillor McLean, question.
Thanks, and through you, Warden. Raj, what role, if any, will the public get to share any comments on the planning process between the two levels of government, challenges that they're seeing? Maybe it's not through the summit, but I'm just curious, could you speak to how you collect that information so that because they're going through it themselves and that they might see things that perhaps staff don't see. So I was just curious, how do you collect that information?
Through you, Warden. So that type of information is collected for particular applications that come in. So that's through the Planning Act. It's a mandated public engagement process. And even though it might be particular to a given development application, we do take in feedback in terms of how is the application process working? Is the intake process working well for the applicant? Are there potential areas that we can improve upon? So that feedback is actually collected year-round throughout the different stages of a development application, as well as an amendment to an official plan as well. And we also do work very closely with our local area municipalities. We host monthly Planners of Dufferin meetings, whereby we do share feedback with one another in terms of, is this going well or is it not? Are there other best practices to consider? So all these things are looked at on a year-round basis. But with regards to the Planning Summit in particular, this is mainly to focus on staff input and to identify common goals that we have at both the county and at the local level, and to ensure at the end of the day that we have clarity with roles and responsibilities with respect to planning and economic development.
Thank you.
Anything further? Councillor Garrett.
Just quickly, the $35,000, it will be fully covered by that budget item, the CAO Strategic Plan 2025 budget?
Through you, Warden Horner, that's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Moving to item number 10.2, the next report is regarding the Dufferin County Paramedic Service 2024 Annual Report. May I have a mover and a seconder for the motion in the report? Moved by Bonato, seconded by Post. Councillor Wrench, again, you separated this item. Do you want to start the discussion?
Why not? Two questions for Gary. The one that I always answer is, or the one that I always ask, and he's ready for it, I'm sure, is how many paramedics, when they go out in the morning, have the advanced care designation, which is the good drugs. And then I've got one more. I'll go one at a time.
Through you, Warden. That does change day to day depending on vacation time, sick time, etc. But approximately 50% of our full-time staff are advanced care paramedics, and we have 4 part-time staff that are advanced care as well.
Thanks. And then the second one is to do with the code reds. So you know, it's in the report. It's not a good thing. We are adding paramedics, which will hopefully help. And then you gave us a pretty detailed discussion about the I'm going to call it the triage system. That's not quite the right, but how you respond to calls. And could you explain, will hopefully that help the code reds a little bit?
Through you, Warden. Yes, that's the intent with this new dispatch triaging system, that when we do have lower numbers of ambulances available, low priority calls could be held to ensure that we have an ambulance available should a higher priority come in.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Councillor Capes?
Thank you, Warden. I just, because it has been brought forward, I just want to say thank you. And I think this is such a critical partnership and service that you provide. And I just want to say thank you and bless you all.
Okay. Of receiving this report. Any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Item 10.3, the next report is regarding the Dufferin Oaks 2024 Resident and Family Satisfaction Survey. May I have a mover and a seconder for the motion in the report? Moved by Little, seconded by Mills. Councillor Wrench, do you want to start the discussion?
Sure. Again, I think this is pretty much always about the same, and the satisfaction is always great. The thing about food, Brenda, is you can give them more choice. I'm assuming it's going to cost quite a bit more money. Is that what you're going to be looking at when you say there's an opportunity there, and how that will impact the budget?
Thank you. Through you, Warden Horner. When we would look at something like that, it wouldn't so much that we'd be offering more choice to everyone. It's really gathering food preferences from the residents and then trying to, make sure that we have those options for those specific residents. Because I think when you look at the overall, there's a high level of satisfaction there. So typically what we're looking at is maybe a few individuals. And it could also be dietary restrictions and just making sure that we're well aware, which I think already staff do a great job, but there's always room for improvement.
Thank you. Any additional questions, discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor of this report? Carried. Item number 11.1, Community Development and Tourism. Councillor Mills, would you just give us a small summary?
Thank you, Warden. Report from the Planning Department. So this has been before Council before, wherein we've been advised that under the new legislation that the pre-consultation process is no longer mandatory, but it is a process that's still highly recommended from our Planning Department. This policy sets out a manual and a form that just sort of sets out what that recommended policy is. I'm not sure if Raj wants to add any more detail to it, but in a nutshell, that's what the report speaks to.
Thank you. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the report? Moved by Mills, seconded by Bonato. Again, Councillor Wrench, you separated the item. Do you wish to start the discussion?
Sure. This is probably one that we didn't have to, but there's two things on here. It's the time that it takes. It seems, I think the argument to having this is always it'll actually speed things up. I don't know if that's true. And the other thing is the fee. I don't know if we're trying to make things easier for developers. Yeah, it's not a lot of money, but isn't this an easy way to say, look, we have planners. This is kind of exactly what they're supposed to be doing, which is consulting and helping, and we shouldn't charge an extra fee for it.
Raj.
Through you, Warden. So to answer your first question, Councillor Wrench, it is actually still encouraged across all municipalities. And the reason why it is considered to help speed up the process is you're able to get all of the different stakeholders in one room with the applicant to be able to address any questions they may have. So for example, if there's a question related to hydro or if there's a question related to roads, we have all of those people in one room at the pre-consultation meeting to be able to address questions that the applicant may have. And so that's the reason for facilitating this type of meeting, and actually it works to speed up the process. And if you do speak to developers, they actually still do go through the process, even though it is not a mandated process anymore under Bill 185. And to answer your second question with regards to the fee, it is actually a standard practice to charge for a pre-consultation meeting. And we actually did a jurisdictional scan last year and did a review of all of our fees that we have. And we came up with this being an average cost. We are actually still on the lower end in terms of municipalities with regards to the fee that is being charged.
Sir McLean, question? You're muted, James.
Thank you. I don't know how much support there will be on for council for this, but I actually would be in support of waiving the fee for builders. We are trying to kickstart the economy and building, and it's incredibly expensive to build homes. And I know that $750 is a drop in the bucket when it costs, a couple $100,000 or $1 million to build a house. But I think we should be looking at making it easier to build, not, and this would be an easy one to remove. My question for Raj is, and I'm in support of this pathway that we're going. Um, if a developer or a homeowner wants to go through the pre-consultation process at the county level, is that how is that separate from at the lower tier level when they do the pre-consultation there? Is there an opportunity to combine the two rather than have them go through both, or is that already happening?
Through you, Warden, it is actually already happening. If a pre-consultation meeting is requested at the local level, we are notified of that. And if a pre-consultation meeting is also requested at the county level, we try and combine both so that it's easier for the developer and all stakeholders to have one combined meeting at which they can receive all of the answers to their questions.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Garretts?
Thanks. I just need some clarification on the policy where it talks about the fees. It says a payment of $750 base fee, which is fine. In certain circumstances, a $10,000 deposit, which is determined at the discretion of county planning division staff. But the website currently doesn't list that as discretionary. So just looking at it, also only lists a pre-consultation for minor applications. So just trying to get clarification on that and see if we need to further explain that deposit, and maybe it's different for different applications.
Through you, Warden. Yes, so our fees and charges bylaw should have that updated in terms of the $10,000 deposit. And the $10,000 deposit is really for the larger developments that do come to the county that require consultation with our engineering and our roads department in terms of if there's a county-facing road that is going to be impacted. For example, if there might be a transportation a transportation study that might be required, things of that nature. So a larger scale development is where that $10,000 deposit would be required. For smaller scale developments, there would be no $10,000 applied to that application. And this is something that is also discussed at the pre-consultation meeting with the applicant so that they're aware of all of the fees that they could potentially be charged for and any applicable deposits that would be applied to that application.
Yeah, but my only concern is more so on the site plan level, which could be just an individual property owner that reading this thinks in order to even get to the pre-consultation, they need to put up $10,000, which could be, cost prohibitive for them. I'm just wondering if we need more clarification around that, because if I'm understanding correctly, before, to have that conversation about what would be required for a deposit requires a pre-consultation meeting, and just reading this, it looks like that $10,000 is okay. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but.
Through you, Warden. Generally, we have inquiries that come into our general mailbox. And at that point, we do go through what is required, what the general steps are. And at that point, that's when the applicant is notified that it might be in their best interest to have a pre-consultation meeting to go over the different particulars. But to simply have a conversation, we don't charge for that.
Okay.
Councillor Little?
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to, I think that the fee is probably a good idea because I feel that down the road, it will save the applicant a lot of time and money, and we are required, the staff are required to put in the time up front. So, it's good to have some form of compensation. And you did just answer my other question that there are cases where a pre-consultation would simply not be required, and you would know that right away, so that people who have small applications would not have to pay the $750 fee. So I do think it's a valuable step in the process, because so many times as planning goes on, you start with one thing of what you think you need, but if the consultation hasn't occurred, you don't recognize that you also would need to do this and this and this, and those fees tend to add up, and it's much better for the applicant to know up front what those costs are going to be. And that time saved down the road will be enormous and of enormous value to anyone. So I do support having this fee in place. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we have moved and seconded that the report from the Director of Community Development and Tourism titled New County Pre-Consultation Process be received and that the draft pre-consultation policy be adopted and the bylaw 2019-10 be repealed. All those in favor of that motion? Any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. All right, moving on to item number 11.3. The next report is regarding the severe weather events this spring. May I have a mover and a seconder for the motions in the report? Moved by Little, seconded by Post. The recommendation that the report of the manager from Preparedness 911 and Corporate Projects overview of spring 2025 severe weather events be received and staff be directed to conduct a thorough debriefing of severe weather events detailed in the report, and that the debriefing process include engagement with members of the community who wish to contribute to the process, and that a complete after-action report with recommendations be presented to County Council for consideration. Okay. Discussion, Councillor Wrench, starting with you.
Sure. Thank you. The only really, well, other than I'm not quite sure how the town halls are going to work and what we actually expect to get out of them. But it's probably a good idea. The question I had, and it was brought up to me, and I don't even know if it's true. But this is why I wanted to ask it. That when local municipalities ask for help from our organization, that help is generally forthcoming, but there's a bill attached to it. I don't know if that's true. If it is, I don't know if that's been the policy, but maybe that's something that I would hope we would look at as we go through this process.
I'm going to turn this one to Sonia.
Thank you, Warden Horner. Thanks for the question, Councillor Wrench. If there's a bill, I am certainly not aware of it, and the intention is definitely not to charge our local municipalities.
Right, that's terrific. I had heard otherwise. Now it's so very good.
Actually, Councillor Wrench, you and I might have been talking to the same person. I heard that as well.
Yeah, that might have been me. Amaranth requested help and were informed that we would not be provided help without a fee. We thankfully received help at no cost through mutual aid from Peel Region for the issue, but we were informed that there would be a cost associated if the county were to provide assistance. Thanks.
Mr. Burns, can you clarify this for us, please?
Through you, Warden, I'm completely unaware of us seeking any kind of compensation. Hasn't been our practice, nor would it be our intent.
Fine. Councillor McLean?
Oh, thank you, Warren. Just two comments. First, I wanted to express sincere appreciation to the county for all the support that you provided to Melanchthon the week or 2 weeks after the ice storm. Our team, our public works team, was completely overwhelmed and continues to work on cleanup efforts and will be doing so probably through the summer. And so I wanted to express my sincere appreciation to Sonia and to Scott, and please, Scott, pass on our appreciation to your team. It was a huge help. It was great to see them. They were out on the weekend, and which was great to see. So it's great to see the two governments working together. For those of you who maybe haven't ventured to North Dufferin since the ice storm, both Malmer and Melanchthon were completely devastated. It was truly significant, something we haven't seen in quite some time. So again, just wanted to take this moment just to call out Dufferin for all the great support that you've provided.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. You okay? All right, Councillor Mills?
Sorry, Warden. I just wondering from Councillor Garrett's, what service specifically was it that was requested that was going to have a fee attached?
Help chipping wood. We can talk after.
If I could just add something, Warden, there may be something if we have a piece of, the only thing that would jump in mind there is if we have a piece of rented equipment, perhaps there's a conversation. I'm not entirely sure, but I have no knowledge of this particular conversation.
Some clarity brought to that, just so that if it should have to happen again, we could get some clarity. Councillor Mills?
Just one more point. I think that speaks to the need for this sort of debriefing. I mean, if there are issues like this, let's get them out there and resolve them.
All right, calling the question then. All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion's carried. All right. Next item is 11.4, and it's the recommendation of the 2025 Community Grant Funds. Headwaters Communities in Actions had a daunting task to score all the applications. We would like to thank their team once again for their hours of work to review the applications. We have Jennifer Payne with us this morning to present the report. So Jennifer, we will ask you to come to the podium and
Thanks very much, and good morning, everyone. Warden Horner, members of council, and my friends on staff. It's delightful to be here with you today to present the assessment report for the Community Grants Program for Dufferin County for 2025. My name is Jennifer Payne. For those who don't know me, I'm Executive Director of Headwaters Communities in Action, and we've been working with the county since 2018 on the assessment portion of the community grants recommendations. Next slide, please. I'll do my best to be brief today. I know you have a lot to get through. So first, I'd like to say a big thank you to the county council for approving the additional allotment for this year. It really made a huge difference. And you'll see as you go through the report just how less taxing this year was than last year. I also want to thank staff who worked with us to make the program go smoothly and handle the application process. And then I'll thank my assessment team who do very diligently go through each and every application with a fine-tooth comb and give a very measured assessment. Next slide, please. Actually, I'll go to the next slide and just talk about the timeline. This is our standard process, which you're familiar with, and it's also detailed in the report. So for 2025, the timeline was pushed forward about a full month due to the budget discussions and budget approval. So that was a factor, we think, for a number of reasons, and I'll detail that in a moment. So our application intake was February 1st to March 4th. We had an information session for prospective applicants on February 13th. We did our scoring between March 8th to 24th and submitted the report for the agenda package April 16th. Then our presentation today, after which, if all are approved, the funds will be dispersed. And then in the fall, we start to collect and share grantee stories, and that helps to promote the next round of grants for 2026. Next slide. So I'll just go through some of the highlights for 2025. We had some applicant support through information session and Q&A. And we also always have an open door support from county staff and HCIA, just if applicants have any questions through the process. This is our second year with the new funding streams, including groundwork for multi-year options, the Bloom grant, which is the traditional one-time, one-year grant, and then Grassroots, which helps support non-registered groups. New this year was our first year using Good Grants software for scoring, and that made a big difference as well. General observation, we saw the quality of applications has improved over time, but the quantity this year was quite reduced. Next slide. So we received 25 applications this year, which is less than half of 2024. Some of the possible reasons for this, so they've not been verified, but we expect that the high number of declines or partial awards from last year may have had an impact and have been a deterrent effect. The 2025 grant process was delayed a month, which may have impacted certain project timelines. And then the other funding options, we expect that people may have had some other successes. The 2025 requests totaled only 97% of available funds. So that new allotment was definitely right-sized, and certainly for this round of applications. So we actually did not recommend the full amount of disbursement. The good news is we were able to recommend full funding for almost all requests. So that made it a very good news story and a much easier year than last year when we had more than 4 times the amount of available funds in requests. So relatively easier year. However, we still gave each application the same level of scrutiny as usual, and the rationale and notes from the assessment team have been provided in each application profile in the report. We saw a nice mix of project types again this year, as well as alignment with county strategic priorities and across the different streams. Next slide. So the total fund allocation that the team had to work with was $130,000, and that's the total allocation of $140 minus the $10 that had already been committed in multi-year grants from 2024. We usually split out the number, the funds that are under $3,000 versus over, just because there are slightly different requirements or criteria for each of those levels, just in terms of the financial statements provided and that sort of thing. So the total requests came in at $125,630 in 25 applications, and the total recommended was $122,630 and 24. So that means the funds remaining would be $7,370. Next slide, please. And this just shows the split across the different streams. We can keep going. So the list of applications that were recommended for funding are here. Next slide, please. I won't go through each of them. The ones in bold are ones recommended for multi-year. And the one exception that was recommended for 0 was the Feminist Conversations, and it's a great program. No issue with what the organization wanted to do. It's just that the benefit to Dufferin was not clearly articulated in the application. So if that could be confirmed, we would certainly recommend funding that. But we couldn't see any plans to deliver in Dufferin. So next slide, please. So I'll actually skip through these charts. They're all in the report, and I want to be mindful of your time. So let's keep going. Keep going. Right, so I just wanted to also give a little bit of a projection given the multi-year grants. So just to look out the next couple of years, there is a typo in the report that I wanted to point out for Caledon Meals on Wheels. It shows that we recommended a 1 year, but they requested 3, and the recommendation was meant to be for the full 3 years. Also, as the Celebrate Your Awesome, we recommend that group partner with a registered organization for the following 2 years. So the forecasted funds that we will have available to work with for grants in 2026 is $107,050. And in 2027, we'll get back the $10,000 that's allocated for the so last year's 3-year. Minus, of course, any additional multi-year grants that are approved in the subsequent years. Next slide, please. So next steps, we'll be reviewing this process, in our observations with staff, and talk about 2026 plans, where we might try to do a little bit more with the stories, the grant stories, and we'll look forward to developing the parameters and tips for 2026 to try to continue to improve the application pool. We may also investigate that drop in applications just to see why people didn't apply this year. We did see a lot of the same applicants year over year, and that's one of the things that we're pleased to be able to explore, the multi-year grants for those who come back year after year and are typically approved. Next slide, please. So thank you again very much for entrusting this important work to us. We are very appreciative of the partnership, and we enjoy doing this process every year. It's kind of a highlight for us, and certainly those on the assessment team are pleased to see what's going on, all the good work that's going on in our community. This grant is an excellent resource for the organizations and agencies in our community who do wonderful work, and so much appreciation to the council and to staff for making this process run so smoothly. So thanks very much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Before we begin discussion, may I have a mover and a seconder? And as mentioned before, we're removing the Celebrate Your Awesome item from the first motion. So if I could have a mover and a seconder for the motions in the report. Moved by Garrett, seconded by Creelman. Okay. Jennifer, thank you for that. And are there any questions? Councillor Garrett.
Yeah, thanks. Just two quick ones on the first and last ones listed. The first one being the Bee Ambassadors Canada. I just asked because there were no notes on this one. Are we confident that the monies will be spent in the Dufferin area?
Yes. So,
okay.
Yep.
And then the last one, which was the Westminster United Church, I've just, it says it's a continuation of an existing program, or sorry, expanding an existing program, and maybe I missed it somewhere, but what program is it that they're expanding?
Oh, sorry, so the detail should be in the profile, oh, sorry, through you, Warden. So that one is their making time with Margot, I think it's called. Their video series.
Okay, thanks. I missed that somehow, but thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Little?
Yes, yes, thank you very much, and through you, Madam Chair. I just had a couple of questions, I guess, or misunderstandings perhaps. A few years ago, a couple of years ago, the grant was kind of changed that it had to be a new or different approach, I guess, to one of the your application. And now it's gone back, and with your repetitive years, it can be the same kind of event year after year as well. And you then would not have to apply for each of those years that, in this case, it's 3 years. You would not have to reapply each of those years. So I'm just looking for some clarification around that particular issue.
Sure, through you, Madam Warden. So the preference was always to promote or encourage new and innovative projects coming to the county. What we noticed, though, over time was that the same organizations, which are kind of foundational in our community, were just needing support for their existing programs that were doing good work, but either needed to meet additional demand or needed to be funded for continuation of their services and programs. So the criteria has varied on that, and it's not a hard criteria that it has to be new, and I don't think it ever was really a hard criteria. But the new streams were developed to try to accommodate that emerging need for more sustainable funding. And that allows organizations to plan ahead, to shore up their organization, and to be able to continue those programs so they don't discontinue, essentially. Does that answer your question?
Well, it does, and it would clarify, yes.
So that multi-year was meant to accommodate that longer-term planning and stability opportunity for organizations.
Which I do appreciate that approach. If I may ask a follow-up question, Madam Chair. You also have the list that you have to be a registered nonprofit to apply. So again, not all groups that do good community events have that application or need to have that application process occur. So is there ways around that you would consider applications without that particular registration?
Through you, Warden Horner, yes. And in fact, that's the whole reason of the grassroots stream, was to accommodate non-registered groups. And so the requirement for being a registered nonprofit or charity was mainly for the Municipal Act and not being able to cut checks to an individual, for example. But with the grassroots stream, and the requirement is they don't have to be registered, but they should either partner with someone who is registered. So that was one accommodation, was to encourage partnerships with a fiscal trustee, or that they have a bank account in the name of the program or the event that they're applying to fund.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any further questions? Philip?
Thanks, and thanks, Jen, and great job. I get to sit on this board, and I barely have time to make it to meetings, so I am very impressed by all the work that all the board members do. And it is quite a lot. Gail just asked the question that I wanted to ask, between the difference between Bloom and grassroots. I did want to touch upon a couple of things that you mentioned, and it's whether or not it's a good idea to follow up. This year you don't have to, you gave money to everyone, but whether or not it's a good idea to follow up with organizations that applied but were denied funding. If you wanted to expand on that, and then I've got one more quick one too.
Sure, through you, Warden. So we don't actively follow up with those who were declined. Certainly last year that would have been a big job, but we do always invite those who were not funded to reach out for if they want additional explanation. And we do try to put in some rationale in the profile section of the report. Not that everyone goes and reads that, but we do have that information out there in the public record.
Thanks. And the other one, the multi-year funding, I did just want to touch on it. We discussed this last night. One of the hopes would be for multi-year funding that because organizations aren't scrambling to get money, they can get on a solid footing, and hopefully in time they won't need funding from us because they've shored it up. Is that sort of a pretty good synopsis of where we landed last night?
Through you, Warden. Yes, I would say so. It gives the organizations an opportunity to be relieved of the burden of applying. So for some of the things that we know are important community projects or repetitive, events that do occur every year, and there's a history of approving those grants every year, so we know that there's support from the county and from certainly through the assessment team, and the applications are well written and they're good benefit to the community. So to some degree, there's that rationale, and then also to stabilize organizations. It's hard to do that in a year. So yes, to your point, having that 3-year timeline allows that organization to shore up additional funding sources and get off the hamster wheel, basically, of grant applications. Thank you.
Anyone further? Seeing none, then we'll call the question. I will not read this whole list of organizations, but just remember, Celebrate Your Awesome is not part of this recommendation. All those in favor of the listing as approved? Thank you. Carried. Now, a second motion I need, and I will ask Lisa to remove herself. I need a motion to approve the recommendation of $5,000 to celebrate your awesome, moved by Mills and seconded by White. All those in favor of that motion? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. If you could call Lisa back. Thank you. All right, thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate your diligence here. All right, moving on. Items 12.1 and 12.4 were separated out by staff and placed under section 12 for discussion. So we now have a presentation, long-term debt annual report, and that presentation, okay. I just need a mover and a seconder to receive this report, White and Garrett's. All those in, do any members have any questions? Seeing none? Call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that one's carried. All right. Long-term financial overview, and unfortunately, Amy is ill today, and so that report has been handed over to Sonia to present. So I will now ask Sonia to start the presentation.
Thank you, Warden Horner. Thanks, everyone. There's been a lot of work done over the last few weeks to try and do an in-depth assessment and evaluation of the impact of some of the really large initiatives that have been considered by council over the last several months. Most of these things were already included in the budget that was presented during the 2025 budget. And as you will likely recall, you can go next slide, Michelle. That budget included some pretty significant increases for 2026, 2027, and 2028. And so when considering some of these larger initiatives and the impact that was already forecasted in the budget, we thought it was really important to come forward with some additional detail so that council would have more information to make decisions about these initiatives. The one thing that was not included in the budget, and we'll discuss that further, is the impact of the road rationalization report. And implementing that road rationalization study. And the reason it wasn't included is because we didn't have the information from the consulting firm that was hired to actually figure out what the cost of all of those roads projects would be. We now have that information, and so it's being incorporated into this work. This initial set of slides does not include that road rationalization. It's just a breakdown of the budget and all of those big reports, and then there's another report on road rationalization. So just to sort of set some groundwork there. So the four-year budget plan that was included in the 2025 budget package had showed an increase of cumulative 4 years, 2026 through 2028, of over 26%, which is certainly a very significant amount. Typically, the goal within any municipal budget is to have an increase that is similar to inflation and then also accounts for growth. If you have assumed inflation at around 3% and growth at about 1.5, which is pretty typical, then that would mean 4.5% per year. Just briefly, there was a small adjustment made to the 2026 and through 2028 numbers from the budget package as to reflect the changes that were made in the 2025 budget. So the removal of the rain barrels, and there were a few other small adjustments that brought that number down slightly. If we look at what is making up that increase. So which parts of the budget contribute to the increase going forward? We can see that the operating levy contribution is by far the biggest contributor to that increase, followed by capital at 5.9% of that amount, and then additions that have been included in the budget package for 2025. Oh, sorry, Michelle, can you move the slides ahead? I'm moving, but Michelle's not. Next one. Yeah, there we go. So this slide shows you the breakdown of that increase that I was going over. And then it also breaks out the impact of the additions from 2025, 2026, and 2027. And it's important to note that if you make additions in one year, especially with programming additions or staffing, those additions carry forward forever or until those changes are reversed or some other change is made. So the net additions from 2025 result in a 3-year increase of 1.83% of the 26%. The ones proposed for 2026 would be 3.43%, and the ones proposed for 2027 would be 2.55%. Next slide, Michelle. So when we look at the operating budget, it's important to figure out what's previous one. Oh. Michelle, can you go back to the operating? Yeah, there we are. Thanks. Not sure which Michelle was controlling the slides. I was talking to the wrong one, apparently. So when we look at the operating levy contribution and we try and figure out what's causing that big increase in the operating levy, it's actually not because of expenses increasing, it's because of revenue contributions decreasing. One of the things to consider is that we've had an annual contribution from the rate stabilization reserve to help reduce the tax levy of about $1 million for the past several years. And that, because the rate stabilization reserve is built by transferring year-end surpluses into the reserve, by transferring that money out and into the budget, it's effectively applying the prior year surplus to the budget. However, as we look forward, it's likely that that contribution will decrease over the next several years. So that decreases the amount of revenue provided in the operating budget by about $750,000, which is a pretty significant number. The other reduction in revenue is from investment income. As we see interest rates come down, good news on lots of fronts, but with respect to investment income, which has been quite considerable over the last few years, that amount does decrease. So when we take out the impact of the rate stabilization reserve reduction and the investment income reduction, it does make that 26% look slightly less. So depending on whether or not there would continue to be a year-end surplus, it may be possible to consider that, to continue with that practice of applying rate stabilization reserve, but it's difficult for us to know that at this time. In addition, you'll recall that during the 2025 budget process, Council did pass a motion that 50% of future surpluses for the next 5 years would be contributed to the Housing Strategy Initiative. Next slide, Michelle. If we then talk about capital, capital is also having a big impact on that overall increase, equating to 5.9% of the 26.41% over the next 3 years. But the capital contribution itself is increasing by 38% over that period, an amount of over $3 million in the next 3 years. And although this is helpful in reducing the infrastructure gap, and we've made great gains with that regard in the last few years, a 38% increase is certainly beyond the financial capacity that we likely have at this time. Capital work is not just a number that shows up. It's based on a number of different studies. We consider external funding sources, the capital asset fund balance when determining the right level of capital levy contribution. And we have seen a trend in the deferral of non-roads and structure projects into future years for the last while. So It also, even though, fiscally that 38% increase doesn't make sense, it also probably isn't even realistic in terms of being able to accomplish that amount of work. So reducing a capital increase to a target of 3% per year rather than a 5% increase would likely make a lot more sense and would help us bring that total levy contribution down. Next slide, Michelle. So by changing that capital levy to a 3% annual increase, that would reduce the overall increase over the 3-year period to 22.13%. Of course, none of these numbers consider growth. Next slide, Michelle. So some of the big projects being considered, the Health and Human Services Hub, or even the renovation of the Edelbrock that we had previously incorporated into the budget. The costs associated with this project were originally estimated between $6 and $8 million. When we completed the study, the amount was higher. But we do believe that there are ways to move forward with that project with a lesser amount. Now, as we've over the last several months talked about the idea of creating a Health and Human Services Hub in this location, additional changes to this plan will be required. It will also need to accommodate some work at the courthouse as we move to shift some of our staff back to that location. We're still working on getting firm numbers on what some of those renovation costs would be, but we do suggest that it would be pretty reasonable to contribute an amount up to $5.465 million. This would be $5 million in debt, and you saw from that previous long-term debt report that there is a significant amount of debt room available, and also an amount of $465,000 from a reserve that was previously established for work related to this project. It's also, as we look at capital initiatives, important to consider the operating impacts of those initiatives. So the operating costs at the Edelbrock Center with this initiative would likely remain quite similar to what they are now. However, given that this new Health and Human Services Hub model would include a number of partners, there will be some additional rent revenue or some agreements that will generate revenue for having those additional tenants occupy the building. And based on an estimate of about 60% of the building being occupied by tenants, that would give us an additional amount of $120,000 per year in revenue. Looking at the operational impact of moving staff back to occupy the courthouse would likely come with a slight increase, probably around $75,000 to $80,000 per year, just because things like cleaning, maintenance, and utilities currently aren't as high as they would be if staff were to occupy that building again. Based on these estimates and the requirement to borrow money to complete some of these renovations, the net impact of all of these changes would be estimated at around $430,000 a year, which is slightly less than what we had included in the budget. So if we take into account all of these changes, this actually brings the amount of the increase down slightly to 21.88%. Next big initiative is the housing strategy and the possibility of developing some supportive housing sites on some of our county property. The approval of the housing strategy did commit us to developing a master housing pipeline, which will require, as we discussed during the budget, some financial commitment. The amount that will be required is certainly not known at this time. We're still working through that process, but it's estimated that anywhere from $2 to $5 million over the next several years would be a reasonable estimate. As we've discussed before, these projects will require partnerships and funding from other levels of government in order for them to proceed. As we talked about, the decision to contribute 50% of the surplus to the Housing Investment Fund over the next several years, plus the allocation of $2 million from the 2024 surplus to the reserve will likely be sufficient to address any commitments required for the housing initiatives. So there will be no change as a result of that. The next big item is the Southern Operations Center. And certainly we've had lots of discussion around the Southern Operations Center, and there'll be more discussion on that later today. Work has been underway for several years on this project. And the need for the Southern Operations Center stems from the inability to always effectively meet the minimum maintenance standards and the need to better service future growth that is happening in the southern part of the county. This analysis of the cost of the Southern Operations Center does not consider the impact of the road rationalization implementation. It is sort of standalone, assuming that things are as they are now. And the reason we did that is because when you start looking at these things all combined together, it becomes really difficult to understand. Sorry, I need a drink. Becomes really difficult to understand what the impact of any one initiative is. So when we look at the Southern Operations Center, there's an estimated capital cost for this project, including engineering, design, land purchase, civil work, construction of the building, including a new garage, sand salt dome, and fueling station, are about $24 million. The hope with this project is that it will be built to a standard that will mitigate climate impacts in the future and also help reduce ongoing energy consumption costs. It's also the hope of the project team that doing those kind of upgrades to the building would allow us to also apply for some external funding, and that would help offset some of the costs of construction. But until the detailed design and funding applications are completed, any savings are unknown and thus are not included in the projections. Annual debt payments will likely be just over $2 million per year for the entire project. This project is development charge eligible. However, the value of the development charges that have currently been collected based on our current background study are not sufficient to meet the needs of this project. There is a scheduled update to the development charges background study taking place later this year. And although the project may be 100% eligible for development charges, the increase that would result to the development charges as a result of having 100% would likely be an amount that would not be palatable or that council might wish to consider. So just for the purposes of this exercise, we've included a 75% coverage of total costs by development charges, so 25% from Dufferin County other funds. However, that could change at council's discretion. Taking into account the 75% application of development charges to the $2 million per year. Oh, sorry.
Through you, Warden, I just wondered if perhaps you want to clarify that previously we were under the impression that land would not be eligible, and now it is.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Scott, for that. With some of the previous changes to development charges that were made over the last couple of years, there was an inclusion in some of that legislation stating that land would no longer be allowed to be part of the development charge. However, the regulations that are required to actually implement that have not been passed. So at this point, land is still an eligible charge. So the land purchase that would be required for the Southern Operations Center is still DC eligible at this time. So if we applied 75% development charges to this project, that would reduce the net debt payment to $500,000 per year. Once construction is complete, there will be new operating costs, including utilities and maintenance, estimated at around $170,000 per year based on a 30,000 square foot building. And to better meet the minimum maintenance standards, the addition of 2 operators and 1 snowplow would be recommended with the addition of the new Southern Operations Center. Again, this does not include the impact of implementing the road rationalization study, because that would have the impact of reducing the amount of kilometers that are needed to be plowed, so there will be an operational impact that's a savings associated with that. So again, this is not including the implementation of the road rationalization study. So the costs associated with the additional snowplow and 2 operators is about $420,000 per year, which includes all staffing related costs, vehicle fuel, maintenance, and future capital replacement. This project will take several years to complete. The estimated costs are being phased in over time and are likely to change somewhat over that period. Similar to the Health and Human Services Hub, the prior year additions have been adjusted and the costs associated with the Southern Operations Center have been shown separately on the slide above, and these changes result in a net increase over the next 3 years of 22.08%. Gone back up a little bit. So a bit of a recap. Next slide, Michelle. We started at 26.78% at the beginning of this exercise. It is now down to 22.08%. If we consider growth, that brings it to 17.58, probably still higher than would be acceptable. Next slide, Michelle. We can see based on this slide that the addition of the Health and Human Services Hub and the Operations Center combined contribute about 2.53% to that total increase. Next slide, Michelle. With the adjusted capital levy to a 3% increase per year, this leaves the net additions and regular operating to be the main areas of concern. The net additions in the 2025 budget included new staff positions, annual operating costs for digital modernization projects, support for older adults in transit, as well as increases to the community grants program. It also includes proposed further increases to the support received from HCIA, a household hazardous waste depot, and full-year impact of paramedic enhancements. After separating out the Health and Human Services Hub and the Southern Operations Center, the remaining net additions for 2026 and 2027 relate to proposed additional staffing. Next slide, Michelle. In order to get to a budget that would be considered reasonable, so that again, that 3% rate of inflation plus the growth of 1.5%, that would mean that we would need an additional 8.5% reduction in the levy. And ultimately, what is currently projected for the budget is what is required to provide the current levels of service, implement initiatives in the strategic plan, and move forward with the projects that have been discussed. The question becomes how to reduce these amounts to be more financially sustainable. There are several considerations, including drawing down reserves, postponement of major initiatives, additional borrowing, or exploring new revenue sources, which we all know are quite elusive. The only other alternative is to reduce services and programs. Next slide, Michelle. So just some other considerations. Reserves and reserve funds, there is a more thorough review being conducted later this year that will come back to council, which could identify additional reserves that could be applied to address some of these concerns. And it will also address what the right level of reserves should be going forward. Our debt capacity, certainly debt capacity for all municipalities is limited by the provincial legislation, but that legislation creates a debt amount that is unrealistic. A $12 million per year debt repayment does not make a lot of sense. But we do have room within our current debt capacity as some of our debt falls off over the next few years. Again, this analysis did not take into account the road rationalization plan. It also doesn't consider any additional costs and also savings that might come about as a result of climate adaptation or mitigation. And certainly always important to consider external economic pressures, including everything that is going on in the world around us. Just a quick note, every $1 million of borrowing is about $90,000 on the levy per year in terms of costs. And in order to get to that 4.5% number each year, which would include gross, so 3% effectively, will require a $5 million reduction over that 3-year period. So approximately $1.6 million per year. As we look at all of this together, it was a lot of information. I know some of it may be new, some of it was actually in the budget. It just felt like the right time to do a deeper dive on it and to provide council with some additional information and some clearer, I think, representation of what the impact of some of these bigger projects is. So with that, are there any questions?
It's a lot to digest, isn't it, really? And I think a lot of this information has been kind of circling around, and it started to build up, I know, in my mind. How much can we bite off here before we put ourselves in an untenable position? So my first question from Councillor Capes.
Thank you very much, Warden, and thank you, Sonia, for a great presentation and making this digestible. It's a lot of information. And I recognize that I'm new to the table and you've maybe had all these conversations before, but I'm going to ask anyway. Have we considered attracting a big program provider like the YMCA to Dufferin so that we can, I'll say, shift some of the burden from the county to a pay-for-service organization who is very good at what they do in terms of the programs they offered. I just put that out there because it's been on my mind. As you know, I'm advocating for an indoor pool for Mono, and I'm trying to find out a way to get there. And if the YMCA becomes one of those ways, then that's what I would like to attract. So that's one question.
Through you, Warden Horner. Thanks for the question, Councillor Capes. I guess I'm not really sure what services you were considering that would be appropriate for the YMCA to provide. One service area that they certainly do provide assistance with right now is childcare. The YMCA is one of the major childcare providers, but we receive a significant amount of funding from the federal and provincial government with respect to childcare, and it really has very little impact on our budget.
Yeah, and I guess I'm thinking, of the YMCAs that are big in big centers, and they provide, indoor everything like sports. Some of them have they have pools, they have, as you say, daycare, they have seniors programs. Like I just wonder if it's something worth exploring to attract a YMCA to Dufferin County and offer, like, see exactly what they can offer and see if that makes sense. And I know it costs money to go do that, but it's just a question. I also, about your road rationalization, the road rationalization would also be offset when you're talking about the Southern Op Center. That would also be offset by any new growth that I've heard rumor about. So that new growth would probably be in the south, and therefore it makes sense for that south op center, and there would be an offset for paying for that there. That's a thought.
Thank you, Councillor Capes. I'm reminded we didn't get a mover and a seconder to put this report on the floor. Could I have that? Post and Creelman? Any other questions? I hope there are some comments and questions. Councillor Post.
Just a very quick one in response to Councillor Cape's questions. Regarding the YMCA, the town of Orangeville specifically is pursuing the YMCA and speaking with them to see if there's opportunity for growth. But But when it comes to the county responsibilities, recreation and indoor programming like that are a lower tier responsibility, not an upper tier. So it wouldn't help the county's budget, but our hope at the town of Orangeville, at least long term, is that we can potentially find a provider who would be willing to offer some sort of a regional recreation facility so that lower tier municipalities that don't have access and are currently using town of Orangeville services or town of Shelburne services, that we can have a more centralized system for that. So we are pursuing some of those conversations, but those conversations wouldn't help to balance out the county portion of the budget. It would be more for lower tier municipalities.
Thank you.
Councillor White?
Thanks. I don't know if it's really more of a question or a statement or I don't even know what it is. But like when I take all this information in, I really wish we had, and I'm not trying to blame anybody or point any fingers, but I really wish we had more deliberate and thoughtful conversation about the budget that we just passed. I mean, I've made no secret of my opinion that I think we looked at a budget that was presented. We've made very, very little change to it, and we passed it when, knowing this kind of thing is coming down the road, we should have taken a more thoughtful look. We should have taken some, maybe moved or changed or altered or taken some things out, even things that maybe we didn't want to take out. But I mean, because we're faced with the ongoing in the future of having to do that regardless. So I think we should have 2 months ago had more thoughtful discussion. There was a lot of people at the table who really didn't say much during the budget presentation, and I think now that it's going to come back to bite us. But.
Councillor McLean?
Thanks. I have a question and then a comment. My question is, can you remind me, how long are we projecting to put 50% of the surplus into a housing reserve?
Through you, Warden Horner, it was for 5 years.
5 years. Okay, thank you. And my comment is, so, I mean, based on this report, it's clearly not sustainable, and we may have to make some changes that we may not be comfortable with to put us on a more sustainable fiscal path. What would be helpful for me would be to see a list of all the major items we're planning to fund over the next few years, and coupled with that, opportunities to scale some of those items, scaling up or scaling down, where those could be cost efficiencies, and then also, comments on what the risks of doing that may be. So, for example, in that type of a report, we could look at the opportunity to perhaps scale down the size of the Southern Operations Center so it's more of a satellite center and reducing it from the current footprint that we're looking at. Obviously, there's some risks. There might be some concerns with that, but just looking at all the major initiatives that we've identified over the next few years and where there might be opportunities to scale down, because I think if we're going to unless we're prepared to increase the tax levy significantly, we're going to have to make some really tough decisions. And it would be helpful to know from staff where there's some flexibility.
Any further questions at this point? Clarification needed? Councillor Wrench.
Thank you. Development charges for the new operations center. I've always been under the impression that development charges have to be growth related. And I'd struggle to see that this is growth related. And then on that, being able to charge development charges for the purchase of the property, if that's okay now, great. But if that regulation comes in and it gets changed again, that's going to significantly change the calculus once again, I'm assuming. So if you could address those two things to start.
Through you, Warden Horner. Thanks, Councillor Wrench. You're correct on the second question, that should there be a future change in policy, then yes, that would have an impact on the development charges that could be collected. With respect to your first question and whether or not it is growth related, discussion with some of the development charges experts to this point indicated that it is all growth related. Because of growth and because just of the significant increase in traffic that has occurred in the southern portion of the county over the last 10 years.
Okay, and then I just want to get clarification about decreasing contributions to capital. Again, I'm assuming when the original contributions were based on need, based on studies, based on deterioration of assets, etc. Is that correct?
Through you, Warden Horner, yes, Councillor Wrench, that is correct. It is based on all of those studies, building condition assessments, all of those sorts of things. However, what frequently happens is when those projects come up, although there was a building condition assessment, for example, that says, replace this on a 12-year cycle, if at that 12-year point, staff do an assessment of the actual physical item and it's still in good working order, then that project wouldn't go ahead. So, good maintenance practices, a number of things can extend the life of particular assets. And so by having good maintenance practices, we're able to do that sometimes. The other issue that comes up, and the reason why sometimes projects don't go ahead, is that there strictly isn't the capacity to get them done. So, staff, it takes time to plan and tender and do all of the work required for a project. And so there's only so much capacity to complete so many projects. And although the perfect plan would have us doing this large amount of capital work every year, it likely isn't realistic. So reducing the capital amount contribution down to 3% per year is not only sort of more financially viable, but is probably a more realistic amount of capital work to get done.
And so if I may, on that point, the capital work still has to be done at some point in time. If we can actually prove that, yes, good maintenance practices have said, okay, we can maintain the life of a bridge, for example, or a road, for example, longer than we thought, I would support that. I will not support simply reducing a capital levy in order to make the budget look better. Our job, as I have always seen it as an organization or as a councillor, is to build, maintain, and replace infrastructure. For us, that means roads and then whatever social services we happen to apply. Everything else is discretionary. So if we're going to cut anything, we better cut something other than what we're supposed to be doing.
Thank you. Anyone else? I think, do you have a rebuttal there or an answer?
So just, the treasurer did send me a note, so I'll just read what she said. She said, according to our asset management plan, in terms of the reducing the capital levy to 3%, we would still be in good shape. So we're not jeopardizing the condition of any of our assets by doing that. And we did just update some of those asset management plans. So again, those numbers change as those reports and studies get updated.
All right, so I don't think any of us are comfortable with some of those projected tax increases, and I think we are going to have to make some significant decisions around this table. I don't think we can make those decisions based on this information, and we will be requiring additional thought and effort as we move forward here on whether it be projects or current programs that we're offering that maybe have outlived their usefulness, or there could be all kinds of combinations. But I, for one, am not interested in going to our people saying we need 22% increase in the next 3 years. It's just... Okay, all those in favor to receive this report? Any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. If everybody wants to get up and refresh your coffee, have a bio break, we'll be back in 5.
We're now on item 10.5. That item we've been referring to many times this morning already. Road rationalization plan. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Moved by Mills, seconded by Taylor. Nice to see your hand, Taylor.
It's been up frequently. It's just not been acknowledged.
All right. Do any members of council have any questions on the road rationalization report? Councillor Little? I know that there was some talk about when we get some roads downloaded that we're going to have some financial compensation. So has there been discussion with those municipalities on how much those dollar values might be? Scott, can I get you to answer this, please?
Through you, Warden, so are we looking at the second report or the first report? The first one. So no, that's a decision that County Council needs to sort of toil with and come up with. That's what this report is about, is kind of what the costs for those concessions could be. The report that comes later is to talk about the service agreements that maybe need to be in place. But I think today your question might have an answer depending on where council goes.
Councillor Wrench.
Thanks. I'm going to go with confused because about 10 minutes ago, I was told that the 3% capital levy was enough to do what we needed to do. And then I read on page 2 of the road rationalization plan about the PCI. If we were going to maintain it over 80, we can't do it because we don't have enough money to do it. I seem to recall, and I will ask a question. I think at Grand Valley, our asset management plan says we aim for 90. What do we aim for at the county?
Through you, Warden, so we have been striving to reach a 75 PCI for some time, and that generally is where we are. Through this plan, we were contemplating increasing that amount, so I believe the figure is in the report from the treasurer is 80 or over 80. But looking at things, we maybe need to maintain the status quo at a 75, which is a reasonable PCI for a road network such as ours.
And so then I will ask the question that I have and that I asked before, are we putting enough away? I'll read, as stated previously, the current plant contribution to capital is higher than what is fiscally responsible. So are we going to be able to maintain our PCI if we reduce the capital levy to 3%?
Don't fight over this one, folks.
through you, Warden. I believe that through working with the treasurer on this report, that the intent or the understanding would be that the 75 PCI would be maintainable with what is proposed. We certainly wouldn't want to go below that. So looking back to the conversation and remembering that my hair didn't light on fire makes me feel as though, yes, we absolutely can maintain 75 based on the conversation we had. It's whether we wanted to increase the PCI, we would not be able to.
Councillor McLean.
I find it challenging to have this conversation separate from the budget conversation because this is an initiative and expenses like any other initiative or expenses that we have. I know that over time, after the 10 years, there will be some cost savings that could be helped to offset certain other expenses. But in the short term, in those first 10 years, there will be significant expenses. And so I'm happy to, continue to have this conversation, but I really feel like this needs to be folded into the broader budget conversation that we have. When we look at all the other initiatives, that this should also be included in that, and talking of scaling. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, James. Anyone else comments on road rationalization? All right, seeing none, I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report. And do any members have any further questions? And if none, could I call a question? All those in favor? Any opposed to receiving? Seeing none, that's carried. All right, number 12.4, the implementation update. This report was deferred from the April 10th council meeting. May I have a mover and a seconder for the motions in the report? Moved by Garrett, seconded by Post. Any discussion here? Are we ready to move into calling the question? All right. All in favor of this report? Any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Okay, number 11, there is no strategic plan update. No correspondence has been received. And any notices of motion at this time? Seeing none, we'll keep moving. The following motion on number 14 was moved by Councillor Mills at the April 10th council meeting. Is there a seconder for the motion so we can put it on the floor for discussion? Seconder by Councillor Bonato. Councillor Mills, would you like to begin the discussion, please?
Thank you, Warden. I think the motion, although it's a bit wordy, is fairly self-explanatory. Really, there's two parts to this. I know that we've had some discussion about the utility of a county planning function from a philosophical point of view, and I do think it's critical for this body to make a statement on that and to take a stand. My thought is that as a county council, we do need to make a statement in principle that we support the county planning function for the reasons expressed in the recitals. And I mean, that is, you know, when you look at a county community like Dufferin, you know, there are so many different nuances. Population is disparately distributed throughout the region. We have, you know, ample farmland that is definitely worthy of protection. That there needs to be a consideration of available resources when we're looking at growth forecasts and population increases over the years. Infrastructure planning, you know, there are just a whole host of things that I think all of us benefit by when we take an approach to planning through a larger county lens. So in principle, the motion is throwing this county council's support behind a county planning function, while also acknowledging that there are probably areas for improvement. And going back to the very first staff report that we looked at this morning, that spoke to the planning summit that is scheduled, staff have already acknowledged there's a willingness on their part to look at making those improvements, to engaging with their local area municipality counterparts, and to having an open and frank discussion amongst county councillors as to how we can make this county planning function operate better and more effectively, you know, not only for our individual municipalities, but ultimately for our ratepayers that we're serving. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. It's a statement of principle that this county council supports the county planning function, but that we acknowledge and commit to finding ways to make it work better.
Thank you for that thoughtful opening discussion. Anyone else wish to add to the discussion in any way? Councillor Post.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing this forward, Councillor Mills. I just wanted to add my commentary to say that fundamentally, I agree with your motion in principle. Again, I also agree with county planning from a strategic priority component, and I'm really excited for the planning summit that we're going to have, because I think it's going to give an opportunity for all local municipalities to be able to have input on where there is perhaps frustration or a feeling of duplication, and I hate to use that term, but I think that there is that overall feeling of duplication in a lot of these areas. And I know from folks who are coming in and going through the planning process, there can be a feeling of extra unnecessary red tape. And I think being able to work through where some of those components are, where there is potentially additional fees that are being charged to developers that are becoming a hindrance to development priorities that local tier municipalities have. And I think being able to really air some of those things is going to be really important as we move forward, because I agree with you. I think fundamentally the county having oversight from the holistic view of the county as a whole is a really important component when we're looking at long-term planning, particularly as we are looking to grow at the rate that we are. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Anyone else? Councillor Garretts.
Could I just ask that we change the wording of planning summit to planning and economic development summit?
Yeah, I'll accept that as a friendly amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Creelman.
Just an observation that may or may not be on point. Always makes me nervous when I hear anyone say that we should reduce fees or reduce development charges, especially to incentivize the creation of housing, without any guarantee that the reduction in fees and or development charges will be passed on to the individuals purchasing those houses. Because frankly, what happens when you reduce those amounts, and there have been political campaigns that have been predicated on reducing development charges as an example, guess who ends up picking up the difference between the cost of development and what we earn by way of DCs? The municipal taxpayer. Every single time. And double whammy, the purchaser doesn't necessarily see the benefit of the reductions. So that's my political statement for the day.
Anyone else? Any comments? Councillor Wrench.
Thanks, through you. Yeah, this motion is what it is. I don't think it's necessary or even useful. We're talking out of both sides of our mouths like politicians, right? We support planning. We have a planning department. It's in the budget. We're going to have a planning summit to try to make things better. I honestly don't know why we're doing this.
To try to make things better, Phil. Okay. If there is no further discussion, I'm ready to take the vote. All those in favor of this motion? Any opposed? 2. Motion is carried. All right. The following motion, moving to 14.1, which is suspending the use of X or Twitter. The following motion was moved by Councillor Creelman at the April 10th council meeting. Is there a seconder for the motion so we can put it to the floor for discussion? Seconded by Mills. Staff prepared an information report to accompany Councillor Creelman's motion, which is circulated with the agenda. Councillor Creelman, would you like to begin the discussion, please?
I think the intent of the motion is fairly straightforward. We would be joining many other municipalities and public institutions in dropping what has increasingly become a very toxic social media forum. And I think we should do it as soon as we can.
Thank you. Councillor McLean?
I've been struggling with this one. I feel like I shouldn't feel as strongly about this as I do. But so I'm just going to raise some of my concerns with this. So first of all, it seems odd to me that we would jettison the social media tool where we have the most users, right? So on X, we have 5,700 followers. On Facebook, we have 3,100, Instagram, 2,000, and LinkedIn, 4,000. So we're cutting off a platform with our largest follower base. It's also curious that we would move to a smaller platform. So as of January 2025, Blue Sky had around 27 million registered users. X, on the other hand, has over 600 million. And lastly, and I think most importantly, I think we need to be careful about appearances of partisanship. For anyone who's kind of watching the social media landscape, we're seeing that platforms are starting to align themselves according to partisanship. X and Truth Social lean to the right. A study out of the US has shown that Blue Sky leans more heavily towards Democrats. And then there's other platforms like Threads. I would just advise that in order to avoid the appearance of partisanship, I think we should either participate in most or all of these tools or none. But to go from a right-leaning tool to a left-leaning one, I think sends a message that I'm not comfortable with.
Thank you. Councillor Wrench?
I'm mad at James now. He stole all my good points. So I will just say, the only thing I'll add to that, I think if we wanted to say a social media is toxic, I think we could insert whatever social media company we wanted. I know I was going to say, we should let staff decide where they want to communicate. There is a staff report saying we shouldn't communicate on X anymore. But I'm with James on this one. I think you try to reach people everywhere and you try to reach everyone. And I was amazed that X has double the followers that everybody else does. It doesn't make sense to let these people go.
Councillor White?
Thanks. It's like me and James discussed this before the meeting, but we didn't, because I agree with his points and Councillor Wrench's points as well. I get the toxicity of social media, but I agree that's a multi-platform problem. If this is not creating giant amounts of extra work or cost, I don't know why we would, cut off one of our social media or one of our communication channels. One of the lines in the report is the county must always strive to communicate inclusively. I think the county must always strive to communicate, period. The end. I get that there are concerns about inclusivity and being authentic or being inauthentic. Our job is to communicate with residents where residents get their information. If that is Twitter, if that is a guy in the parking lot doing smoke signals, it doesn't matter. Like, it's our job to communicate. And we have enough problems getting our message out to people. We shouldn't be looking to cut off any of those channels that we do, regardless of the toxicity level of it. We're not promoting toxicity or toxic posts. Our posts are meaningful. They contain relevant information, and I would assume we don't engage in back and forth toxic banter on those posts. So I don't know why we would cut that off.
Councillor Creelman?
I would normally agree with the sentiments expressed that we should use every tool in the toolbox, to use that ubiquitous expression, to communicate with our residents and others. However, what I find offensive is that in order to go to X, first of all, you have to be on X to get to X, which is interesting. And when you go on X to see what the County of Dufferin wants you to learn about, you have to wade through whatever the algorithm of the week is that steers you in the direction of some pretty nasty stuff. And that's the problem I have with it, is it is very much an algorithm driven platform that reflects values that I don't think are held by anyone around this table. Again, you have to be a member of X to get on X. As I found out when I dropped X and I decided I'd try and take a peek, doesn't let you do it. But if it does, you're wading through all kinds of stuff and until you find the information you want to find about the County of Dufferin.
Councillor Capes.
Thank you, Madam Warden. This is a great conversation, and I'll be open and honest. I do not use any social media tools at all. I don't go beyond email and LinkedIn, so I don't have a lot of information about those spaces. And I do agree that we should reach residents in the preferred manner in which they want to receive and look for information about what's going on at the county. Have we ever actually done a survey to find out where our residents really want the information? I know I heard those numbers that you mentioned, James, which is brilliant, but are those our residents? Or are they just people anywhere? And so where do our residents want us to connect to them? I don't know if we've ever done that. So forgive me if I'm asking a question you already all know.
Thank you, Elaine. James, those numbers you had, those were our residents, weren't they? Oh, they weren't our residents? Okay, I'll let Sonia go on this
Through
one.
you, Warden Horner, there's no way to know where those followers are from or if in fact they're actual people or bots. So there is a higher prevalence of bots on X than on a number of the other platforms, but we can't possibly know where they're coming from.
All right. And Elaine?
Sorry, my question, I think, got lost. Do we know, have we done a survey out to all of our residents, Dufferin County residents, to find out where they want to go to get information about what's happening and where they want us to communicate with them?
Through you, Warden Horner, we have asked those types of questions in the past through different consultation exercises, and I believe several years ago we did have a Join in Dufferin survey on that issue, but certainly something that we can do again in the future to get a more current pulse on where people would like to receive their information.
All right, so one more, John?
One last quick point. It's not the numbers that are signed up, it's the level of engagement that matters. And the number of occasions where you can actually see engagement between the host and those who they are trying to reach. And I think X falls down in that regard.
Sonia?
Yeah, through you, Warden Horner, just seeing that our last post on X was seen by 29 followers.
29.
Yeah.
29.
Mm-hmm. Our last post was seen by 29 followers.
Okay, we're ready to take the vote on this, and we're going to call for a recorded vote on this one, if we could.
There's a comment. Sorry, Warden Todd had his hand.
Oh, sorry, Todd.
Yeah, thanks very much, everyone. I guess I just wanted to weigh in. And James, thank you for your comments. To me, I don't know that this really matters in the grand scheme of things. Like to have another source available to us is probably what we should be doing. You know, candidly, and I don't know that people are really following the County of Dufferin's commentary on any social media anyway. Like it's, yes, we have followers, and I don't mean to be negative, I guess, in this way, but we don't have a lot of interaction necessarily. The true interaction is when the councillors that are around this table take that information on their own and share it with their communities and make sure that the County of Dufferin's, benevolence is shared and understood. Like I hear the 29. I'm just not sure it really matters in the grand scheme of things. Like personally, I get a lot of my news from X still. Like that's where I found out that Mono was building a pool. So that's fact-based good stuff. And I don't know why we'd get out of it. Like we should just keep going and stay where we are.
Okay, so I think we'll take the vote. And I have called for a recorded vote on this, just so we can keep track of where everybody's heads are here.
Warden Horner?
No.
Councillor Little?
Yes.
Councillor McLean?
No.
Councillor Mills?
Yes.
Councillor Capes?
Yes.
Councillor Post?
No.
Councillor Wrench?
No.
Councillor Solomon?
No.
Councillor Taylor?
No.
Councillor White?
No.
Councillor Krillman?
Yes.
Councillor Guardhouse?
Yes.
Councillor Garretts?
No.
Councillor Bonato?
Yes.
And Councillor Hawkins?
No.
And that is lost 22 to 12.
Yes, Councillor Garrett.
Well, I guess, so are we going to speak now about the report on X, or is that, because what I was getting at was this, the report suggested that we switch to Blue Sky, and we've now decided to stay with X, but does that mean we're not also going to continue with the Blue Sky as a communication tool, is my question.
Through you, Warden Horner, I mean, based on the discussion today, the more communication tools seemed to be better, so we will proceed with also creating a Blue Sky account.
Okay, thanks. I was just looking for clarification on that.
Thank you. All right, we're now going to move into closed session, which is number 15 on your agenda. Before we move into closed session, staff will place anyone who is not to be in the closed session into the waiting room. Staff will lock the meeting and live stream will stop. People in the waiting room will see a message that once the meeting is open, they will be brought back in. If anyone tries to log into the meeting, they will receive a notice that the meeting is locked. Once council has made a motion to move back into open session, everyone in the meeting room will be brought back into the meeting and live stream will start again. May I have a mover and a seconder to go into closed session in accordance with the Municipal Act, Section 239(2)C, pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality. Moved by Mills, seconded by Bonato. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none.